Welcome back to Computer Science 4300. I've reordered things a little bit. Lecture 14 was previously lecture 15 and vice versa, so I swapped 14 and 15 in order to give you more information about your course project a little bit earlier. So you have all the tools you need to work on assignment 3. So let's take a little bit to talk about the project and what you're going to have to do. Because that is the big part of the marks. That's like half of the marks in the course is that project. So in order to get all the information about the project, just click right here on the new link on the spreadsheet. So let's do that. So we open this up and we get the project specification. So there are no lecture slides for today, but I will be going through line by line the project specification to make sure there's no misinformation. And to make sure everything is correct here for you. So let's just do it. Computer Science 4300 final project specification. The final course project is to complete a full game. You know, this isn't like an industry video game, but as full as you can get within a course, using the specification in this document. The game must have the bare minimum functionality mentioned here, and any extra functionality will be greatly appreciated. Projects can be done in groups of up to 4 people. Groups of exactly 4 people are greatly preferred. So what that means is, if you really think you can do all of this with 2 people, I am not forcing you to join a group of 4. However, there's a lot of stuff to do. Okay, so I will put up a spreadsheet. I'll link to it on D2L for finding a group. You can post in the looking for group channel on the Discord server, but just know that projects can be done in groups of up to 4 people, and it will be significantly less work if you do it in a group of 4 people than just with 2 people. I don't recommend doing this solo. It's going to be a lot of work. And it must be significantly different from existing assignments, meaning that you can't just hand in assignment 3 with a few extra features, okay? It's got to have a different look, it's got to have a different feel, different gameplay mechanics, etc. The final project and report is due on December 16th, 2020 at 11:59 p.m. This is a hard deadline. You can't go 1 minute later. Because that is the second last day of exams. It's the latest I could possibly have it due because marks have to be in that week. So I need physical time in order to mark these things. So the second last day of exams is when the final project, everything is due. However, before that, in about 3 weeks, you have your first deadline, and that is the project proposal. So you have about 3 weeks to get your group together. Please, you do not need to wait 3 weeks for this, but go get your group together and then talk about your project, and you have to submit a project proposal on D2L by 11:59 p.m. on November 16th. Okay, so exactly 1 month before your project is due, your project proposal is due. Your proposal will be reviewed to determine if it's enough work or too much work for the scope of the course. Meaning, some of you may want to make just a little Mario game with no extra features. That is not enough work. Some of you might want to make like a 2D MMO with networking and all that kind of stuff. That is too much work. Okay, so I'll review it and see what you should keep or what you should add or what you should throw away. The project proposal should be a single PDF file describing the following information and be approximately 2 to 3 pages in length. So your group member names and student IDs, the game name, genre, overall feel, main gameplay style, examples of gameplay scenarios involving each of the mechanics listed below, and a list of extra features of the game which has not been yet completed in assignments. So I'll take all of that and I'll review it and I'll say, okay, this sounds good, good luck. And just keep in mind that if things change between the project proposal and the final project, that's okay. However, there's a portion of the final submission that's going to be dedicated to here's why it wasn't exactly the same as the proposal. So if it differs a little bit, that's fine, but it shouldn't differ too much because I've given you feedback on the proposal. The main bulk of this document is just describing the required gameplay features that I want you to have for the game. So here's the overview of the game. The game must be implemented using the ECS architecture in C++ using only the SFML library. So you can just think of this as a giant assignment, right? So use what you've done in the assignments, but add a bunch of stuff to it. You may use any course code already written as the basis for your game. So for example, if you're going to be doing a platformer, you can take the code from assignment 3 and just start modifying that to do your project. However, the gameplay is going to have a lot more features. The game types that you could make for this are like a 2D platformer, a top-down shooter, an RPG game, an action-adventure game, etc. It must contain at least 3 full pre-built levels, in which each level you have to accomplish some task, and it has to have a final boss battle with special mechanics. It must contain a custom menu that allows the player to either play the game, edit the levels, or select the options. And we'll get into all that in a little bit. It must contain some sort of in-game menu. So this is while you're playing the game, there has to be some sort of menu that's like select an item or an inventory or some options in the game. It must contain a level editor that allows for loading, editing, and saving of game levels. So there's an entire section on that, and we will have a lecture on that in a future class. It must contain a game over screen indicating when the game has been finished or when you've lost all your lives. All levels, player, and game configuration options must be defined in external text files, and all assets should be gathered or created by project group members. You are not allowed to reuse any assets that I've given out in this course for your project. Okay. Game scenes. So here are the different scenes. You have to have this at least as a minimum. Now, I understand that like this document is, it's 2 full pages of gameplay mechanics. However, you've already implemented a lot of this, okay? And it turns out like down here where I've colored things in green, that's the stuff you've already done, or you will already have done in assignments by the time your project rolls around. So even though this sounds like a lot of stuff, you've done at least half of it already in the course, probably like 60% of it. So the game scenes must contain a main menu scene that implements the main menu functionality. You must contain an overworld map scene that allows for level selection and game progression. So think like Super Mario World or Super Mario Bros. 3, where there's an overworld map that you can like walk through, like walk to level 1, start playing level 1. And you can't get to level 2 until you've beaten level 1, that sort of thing. Must contain a main gameplay scene that implements the game physics of the main gameplay mode. So this would be like the scene play in assignment 3. Must contain some sort of item or inventory in-game scene that is used for a relevant function. I don't know why that says many, that's a typo. So inventory or in-game scene that is used for relevant function, meaning like if you have an inventory of items, then the inventory scene is used and you can select from your inventory. Must contain a level editor scene that implements the level editor functionality. Must contain a game over scene with some sort of animation and game over or credits. Alrighty, so those are the scenes that you have to have in your final project. Required gameplay and mechanics. Your game must contain all of the following mechanics. Describe how they will be used in the proposal. So when you write the proposal, copy and paste all of these lines, not the description, but the headers, okay? So when you propose your game, you have to say collisions. Here's how we'll be doing collisions in the game. Like our player will collide with tiles, bullets will collide with enemies, etc. Here's the different types of bullets or different types of weapons we'll have in the game. So let's just read this now. So you'll copy and paste all that and give explanations for all of these in your proposal. Your game must include rectangular bounding box collisions between some entities. It can include more than that, but it must include the basic rectangular bounding box collisions. Bullets and weapons. Your game must include multiple weapons that are usable by the player and swapping during gameplay, or swappable during gameplay. So for example, Mega Man or Link swapping weapons during play. Maybe you start with punching, and then you can pick up a slingshot or a chainsaw or a shotgun or a pistol. Like, you must have different weapons. Let's say at least 3 different weapons that you can switch through during the game. NPCs. There must be non-player characters in the game that act as enemies or allies for certain gameplay elements. Some of these NPCs must contain basic AI, such as pathfinding, shooting, patrolling, and battling with the player. Moving tiles. Your game must include some part of the level which moves, such as platforms or elevators. And that's not a huge deal. Now that you're well into assignment 3, you can think about how you would implement something like that. Hit points and damage. Players or enemies in the game should have hit points and take damage and die when they get to 0 hit points. All right. Now, if you want to implement a friendlier game where you're not killing things, but you have to feed people candy until they're full or something like that, that's fine as well, right? But there has to be some sort of statistic that gets depleted or filled up as you collide with an enemy. And that's how I'm just calling it hit points or damage, but maybe you're feeding fish to a penguin, right? That's fine as well. Status effects. Your game must contain at least 3 separate status effects for which the player can obtain in some way. So for example, an item, a collision, or ability, etc., which alter the gameplay for a limited amount of time. For example, a speed potion might make the player run faster, or a temporary invulnerability like a Super Mario Star, or a quad damage like in Quake. So there's something that's going to happen in the game, whether it's an ability, it's an object that you pick up, or it's something that you interact with, which will give you a limited duration status effect. So you have to implement that as well. Objects and inventory. The player should have an inventory of items which can be picked up during play and used somehow. So for example, you can pick up a health potion or a sprint potion and then use it later. Okay, so you don't just run over it and it has its effect. You start with none of them or some of them, and then you pick up more of them. That is recorded in your inventory somehow, and then you're going to be able to activate things in your inventory in some way. An in-game menu must show the available items to the player somehow. So you're going to think about how you would implement something like that. Raycasting. Visibility and raycasting calculations should be used in some form in the game. So for example, like you'll see in assignment 4, the enemy could maybe not react until they see the player. So think of a turret in Half-Life or something like that, right? Or in Portal, where it just it scans back and forth until it sees you and then it starts shooting at you, something like that. Lighting effects. Your game must contain some sort of lighting effect, similar to the one demonstrated in class with the sight and light demo. So for example, carrying a torch or a flashlight around the level makes some part of the level brighter or darker, or placing light sources within a level. Now, this doesn't have to be perfectly ray traced lighting. It's just that something that was darker is now brighter, and that ray tracing that we did is used in some way for that game mechanic. Okay. There must be some form of gravity or attractor in the game that applies acceleration to the player. So for example, it doesn't necessarily have to be gravity just pulling the player down in a 2D setting. We had one project one year that was a top-down bullet hell shooter type game, which is perfectly fine. And what they did was they had some black holes in the level that would pull you in until you destroyed them somehow. So that's another example. Your game must use at least 2 different camera views in an interesting way. Okay, so you can't just have Mario just being looked at. And it can't just be like you took assignment 4 and did the same thing as assignment 4. You have to have new, interesting, at least one new, interesting way of using the camera. So, for example, a mini map, a backward view, an NPC view, something like that. Pathfinding and steering. We haven't done this yet. So if you don't know what it is yet, we will have a lecture on it soon. So for example, pathfinding and steering, that's the next lecture. Okay? So pathfinding and steering, some entities in the game must exhibit non-trivial pathfinding and smooth steering behavior. We'll talk about that in the next lecture, so don't worry about what that means right now. But non-trivial pathfinding means it's not just trying to walk straight at me and getting stuck on a bunch of stuff. It doesn't have to be perfect pathfinding, but you'll have to do something in order to try and make it a little bit non-trivial or a little bit intelligent. Game progression. Your overworld map should somehow lock or unlock game progression based on the levels that you've completed. So, for example, in like Super Mario World, there's a yellow dot if the world hasn't been completed. There's a red dot if it has been completed. And you can't select a level until you've beaten previous levels. Save or load the game. You must have the ability to save and load your game progress somehow to a file. Okay? So you might have a character profile. You may just like dump your game progression to a save file. But there has to be some sort of way to save and load that to a file. Shaders. Some entities in the game must use shaders that alter their appearance in some meaningful way. What is a shader, you might ask? Well, we will have a shader lecture in the future, but not just yet. So don't worry about shaders right now. You're going to have at least 3 shaders, and that won't be a lot of work, trust me. Parallax. You must incorporate parallax via multiple background layers in some way in your game. All right. Your game must have a user interface. Oh, sorry, the next thing. Your user interface or HUD. So this user interface is not necessarily a new thing. Like, for example, objects in inventory, that ties into this. And also, HUD just means like displaying your hit points, displaying your ammo, stuff like that. Your game must have a user interface or HUD which displays information such as player health, ammo, game progression, status effects, whatever. That's not a huge deal. Your game must have music that plays in the background, as well as unique sounds associated with attacking, taking or dealing damage, killing enemies, picking up items, finishing a level, etc. That's really not a lot of work. Options. Your game must have an options menu which allows you to change the following settings. Music volume and sound effects volume. So there has to be a separate option for each. So you can turn off the music, or you can turn off the sound, or you can select any number of different volumes. Game difficulty. So I essentially want you to have like your standard game difficulty. Then you're going to have an easy difficulty where you deal twice the damage and take half the damage. And then, you're going to have a hard difficulty where you deal half the damage and take twice the damage. So this is like the bare minimum right here. You can have other things in there for game difficulty if you want to. Maybe you have like a higher frequency of items dropped or something like that. But this is like the bare minimum functionality. You could use a global difficulty namespace to store related variables, etc. And in the options, you must have the ability to rebind keys. All right? So for example, all of your gameplay keys, so moving left, right, jumping and shooting, all of those you must have some system that you're able to rebind those. So for example, you could like go down the menu, hit the enter key on left, and then the next button you push is the button that you will push to move left in the gameplay. So you have to be able to rebind your keys. And any extras. So you can get a lot of bonus marks on this. Think about this. Bonus marks on your project can be worth up to 5% of your total year's mark. It's crazy. Like if you do bonus stuff on the project, 10% of the project, which is worth 50%, is for bonus marks, okay? So you could have like really nice special effects, complicated weapons, polished UI, like in-depth story or whatever, like however you've implemented that. All of that stuff is great for bonus marks. So please go crazy with the bonus stuff. The level editor. And we haven't talked about this yet. However, in 1 week, we'll have the lecture that talks about game tools and dragging and dropping. Okay, so how could we implement drag and drop into our game engine that will really easily make us a level editor? Well, we'll talk about that, but here's what you have to do. So your game must contain a level editor similar to the one found in like Super Mario Maker or Mega Man Maker. All right. So I forgot to download that, but just go look on YouTube at someone making a level in Super Mario Maker. Okay. And I'll have, in this lecture, lecture 16, I'll show you some more examples of what I'm talking about when it comes to level editor. All of your main gameplay levels must be able to be made from within the level editor. So that means that all of the levels that like you choose to play, like level 1, level 2, level 3, all of those have to be made with your level editor. You can't just hard code them, okay? This level editor has to be used by you to make your levels, and I should be able to use it to make my own levels. The overworld map, however, can be hard coded. You can hard code your own overworld map. This level editor should operate on a grid similar to the ones found in assignment 3 and 4. The level editor should have a menu that allows you to select an existing level to edit. I have some sample code here on my GitHub, which I will... Oh yeah, so here on my GitHub, I have a game state menu which allows you to open a file, read the file, and it has like a little menu system where you press up and down and you select options in a menu. So that is just a little sample code there for doing that. And the sample code for assignment 3 is actually, the menu scene is quite similar. You should be able to select and place any texture or animation defined in the assets file into the level. So you have to be able to click and drag or select somehow different assets within the level. And again, when it comes to the game tools drag and drop lecture, I'll give you exactly what I mean by that. Any parameters of specific entities must be editable via the level editor. So for example, whether or not NPCs block vision, movement, neither, which is something we'll do in assignment 4, the hit points or damage of NPCs in the level, or the patrol points or moving tiles for NPCs in the level. All of these have to be put into the level editor. Now, this sounds like an absolutely insane amount of work, but trust me, it is a good bit of work, but that's why, you could have someone in your group of up to 4 people devoted 100% to making the level editor. That's why this is a group project, because there's a significant amount of work. And I know there's a bunch of people out there who will say, we don't like group work. Well, tough luck, because that is, I'm sorry, but the rest of your life in computing and programming will be group work. And you just have to deal with groups of work and versioning control or GitHub or something, sharing code, reading other people's code, editing code, unless you're an extremely hardworking person or only doing one course this year or something like that, and you're somehow able to do all this yourself. So please get your groups together and say like, okay, do you want to do a level editor? Do you want to do some game mechanics? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? How you accomplish this parameter input is completely up to you. One way may be to build a menu that pops up, or you could select parameters via a key press and then edit it via a drop-down menu. I don't care how you do it, as long as you explain how you do it. All right. YouTube game trailer. 5% of the project mark will be for making a YouTube video trailer for your game. So you're going to have to take your completed game and make a video trailer that is between 2 and 3 minutes long. Trailers will be listed on the course website for future classes to see, and you can also, they're really good for a portfolio. So if you're applying for a game dev job, someone can say, oh, what games have you done or worked on? Well, you can show them the video that you did for your course project. And if you're looking for game ideas, which is down here, if you go to my website and you go to teaching and you go to down here, COMP4300, here is a playlist of trailers for previous year's courses. Okay, so there's a bunch of different games here. Here's one, for example. This is like a game that was made for a previous iteration of the course. So go through and look at some of those things, and you can see sort of the scope of, how well people made their games in previous years, etc. So all of those are there for you to look at. And then yours will be added to that list later. Game assets. Your game cannot reuse any assets that have been given out in the course, unless you really want to use like Mega Man or Link, for example. You can maybe use those sprites, but try and come up with something a little bit more original. You do not need to create original game assets from scratch, but you do need to obtain them from somewhere. So you have to go out and look for assets for your game, but you don't need to be an artist. Like, you don't need to draw them all from scratch, okay? Now, something that's very, very important is your project report video. It is worth 20% of your project, and because this is an online course, this is even more important, because I need to be able to see you present your game, present it working, and this is your time to show me all of the things in your game and how you got it to work, etc. So your project must contain a video report presentation about 10 to 15 minutes in length containing the following information. It's probably going to be 15 minutes in length if you've done anything significant. So you want to do an overview of all the game details described in the game overview above, a description of all the extra features put into the game on top of those specifically asked for, demonstrations of all game mechanics, so you have to play your game and show me this is the sliding, this is the double jumping, these are the wall jumps, this is the rocket launcher, all that kind of stuff, with at least one full level playthrough in the video. Also demo the level editor. So how would you go from a blank level to a new level? A detailed list of the controls for your game, how to play the game and what the objectives are. So a little tutorial for your game. Notes on anything that you tried to implement and didn't get working. And this video must contain audio commentary or explanation. So you must be speaking in the video, okay? I don't want to just read walls of text or walls of PowerPoint presentations for the video. You have to be speaking, and you're going to upload it to YouTube, and then you're going to send that link to me as part of your final video report. Now, even though this is worth 20%, you cannot pass your final project without making a project video, okay? So you can't just do the game and submit the game and think you've just passed, right? You have to do a project report in order for your project to be considered passable. So you just have to do this. It's not an option. You have to do your project report. You can't just leave it out and eat the 20 marks. It's not an option. I had someone try to do that last year, and just no, you can't do that. So if you're absolutely stuck for a game idea, I would recommend checking out some older NES or SNES games for ideas. For example, if you want to recreate the mechanics of Super Mario 3 or Mega Man 2 or whatever old game that you enjoy, you can do that. Just be sure to implement all of the required project features that may not have been present in those games. So let's say, for example, you really liked Super Mario 2 as a kid, right? You can implement Super Mario 2 or Mega Man 2, but for example, there may not have been any shaders in that game, or there may not have been pathfinding in that game, but you'll have to just add those features to it. Okay? That's it. That's the project. So what you have to do now is you have to spend the next 2 weeks or so getting your group together and agreeing on a game that you would like to make. And also agreeing on like maybe what parts of the assignment you're most interested in implementing, right? So do you want to be the person to implement, maybe you implement these mechanics, someone else implements these mechanics, someone does the overworld map and someone else does the level editor, etc. I had one group last year where one person, I don't want this to happen ideally, but I can't police it either, where one person in the group was really good with video, so they did no coding and did the video report. Please don't let that happen, okay? If someone in the group, well, let me talk about that in a second, but please don't just do that where one person, like, yes, if someone wants to do the majority of the report, you can let them, but they should have done some work on the project as well. And ideally, everyone in the project is speaking for at least some duration of the video on what they worked on. So you'd say, hi, my name is Dave. I worked on the level editor, so I'm going to explain the level editor now. Hi, my name is Susan. I worked on the overworld map, so here's the overworld map. Hey, I'm Jason. I did the options menu or something like that. Okay. So that is the project specification. Please get to work on the project proposal. If you submit the project proposal early, send me an email and I will look at it early. So this is due at the latest of November 16th, and then you will have exactly 1 month to the minute to do the project. But if you get me a project proposal tomorrow, I'll review it for you, and you'll have almost 2 months to work on your project, okay? So that's up to you. Now, you may say, Dave, you got us working on a project, but I'm still working on assignments, right? The assignments are a subset of the project. The way, if you haven't figured out by now, the way this course is set up is that the assignments are teaching you how to do the project. And if you look, about 60%, so all of these things in green are already done for you in the assignments. So you can just take assignment 3 or assignment 4 and start programming from there, and you already have half of the game mechanics of the project done. So while this looks like an absolutely insane amount of work, it's not, because you spent 3/4 of the course implementing half of it already. Okay? So it's a lot of work, but it's designed to be up to 4 people worth of work. Okay? Someone asked, will you be getting skeleton code for the final project? No. All of your assignments are your skeleton code for the final project. So you will take assignment, like you can reuse any code that you have written for any assignment for the final project. So whatever you submitted for assignment 4, there you go. That's the start of your project. Because ideally assignment 4 has more features implemented than assignment 3. So you'd start from the assignment 4 game engine and then work from there. So that is your skeleton code, is the work that you've already done. Someone made a joke about outsourcing parts of the project. I shouldn't need to even respond to that. But I did catch a group in another course who paid someone else to do the project. It was very obvious that the people who had gotten 20 and 30% in all the assignments all of a sudden did a project that was worth like 95%. And I found out, those people did not pass the course, okay? And so please don't even consider outsourcing any of your project. It will work out very, very poorly for you. Because anyone you outsource it to, the stink of their code will be all over your project. So please don't try and cheat the final project. And also, the person who you are in school will be the person that you are for the rest of your life, right? So if you're a person in school who wants to learn and wants to get better, you will become very good at your job. You will become very successful. If you're the type of person who wants to cheat your way through school, then you will be the type of person who wants to cheat your way through your job. And ideally, you'll be found out, and that won't be very good. So try and do a good job on the project. I think you'll enjoy it. And again, go to my website, go to teaching, scroll down. You can see even the COMP4300 projects. For example, there's some really good examples of projects in other courses that I've done as well. Like this one. Made a really good trailer for a fun game that they played with a really neat, like, old school Game Boy like aesthetic. You have complete creative control over this project, so make it what you will, right? I think it'll be fun, even if it is a bunch of work. Just think about it. You get to make a game for school, right? I would have killed for the ability to do that when I was going through university. Okay. So I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I'm going to end it there. And in the next one, we're going to talk about pathfinding and steering. And then next Thursday is all about assignment 4. So remember, the project specification file is linked here right off of the schedule, so you can't miss it. Please go review that again and try and get your group together as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching. This was a really short one, but I'm not going to bog you down with extra material that you don't need while you're still working on assignment 3. So, go get your group members, and I'll see you next time.